Good evening and welcome back to Prime of Midlife. It's Tuesday evening and this evening we are talking trucks and food. Trucks because I just found out, I think yesterday, the number of miles covered by empty lorries throughout the world is huge. Seemingly there's something like 5 billion miles driven in the UK per year by trucks running empty. I think in the EU it's 15% is of the mileage is run empty, and in the US it's about 20%. That's according to the figures I saw in the newspaper. So I had a thought about it, and they made a very good point, which I completely understand, in that here in the UK, a lot of things that are imported come into the south of the country, down in Kent, etc., and they get trucked up throughout the country. So there's an awful lot more lorries come into Scotland full and leave empty because they have to bring stuff. You know, Scotland doesn't have a massive export, but we have a massive import in relative terms. So as you get further away from the ports in Dover, obviously there's more mileage is done empty when they get up to like here or up to Inverness. There's only so much that Inverness can send down. So there's a lot of lorries run back the way empty. There are a couple of companies that I read about in the newspaper who are trying to do an app type thing so that you can say, right, I'm running empty, does anyone want anything lifted? And hopefully that'll make some difference. I don't know how it works in other countries, it didn't particularly say. But I was just having a thing because today's the day in ULEZ in London, which I think is awful. You know, congestion charge, ULEZ, etc. Maybe do something about your policing and your housing before you start charging everyone to drive to work. So yeah, you can tell I'm not impressed with the ULEZ. But it makes you think, if there's such a big thing about, oh, we need to have electric cars, we need to have congestion charges and ULEZ charges, which is your ultra low emission zone. Do you maybe want to look at the other things first? Do you maybe want to look at the fact that there's 5 billion miles in the UK done by empty lorries? Is there not a better way of doing it? Surely there's a better way of doing it. I just haven't thought of it yet. So any ideas in the comments below, because you just never know when it will get picked up, or we can send it somewhere or something. But I do think personally that your average man in the street is getting targeted to say, oh, you can't do this, you can't do that, you know, you can't drive, we want you to drive electric cars, we want you to get rid of your gas central heating, we want everything to go to electric. Please see last night's video about what happens if we have a power cut, if that happens. But, you know, get rid of all this stuff. But they're still running empty lorries. They've still got the Prime Minister of the UK going from London to Norwich in a helicopter. Really? Was that necessary? So anyway, that's my wee thought. That, you know, it seems to be we're targeting very specific things. And again, as I did in the live a few weeks ago, you know, if you see how many planes would normally fly, not this week obviously because there's been the traffic control thing, but how many planes would normally fly? Is there a need for that many planes? You know, private jets zipping here, there and everywhere. Like, what is it, there a G20 summit coming up or whatever? How many private planes are going to be taking, you know, world leaders and their hang-me-ons to these sort of events? We need to be looking at this rather than just vilify normal people trying to go about their daily business. So that's number one. My other thought was shopping, food. Because there's a whole thing about the costs for farmers and how it's not getting projected into the house, into the shopping. And what was the number I read? It was something like it's gone up by, oh, I can't even remember, but it's gone up by a ridiculous amount for them to produce the food that we eat, and they get something like 1 pence of profit per packet. You know, a packet of cheese, the farmer gets 1 pence of profit for a packet of cheese. Now, I think that's wrong. Somebody somewhere is making way too much profit. But then, taking that back, then you have to start looking at how does it work. So you've got the farmer who's got his milking cows to do the thing. So he has his milking machine, which runs on electricity. So that's gone up. Then he has to do the mixy thing to make cheese that they do. You know, the thing in the big mixers and separate the curds and the whey and do all the stuff. Electricity again. They've got to put fertiliser on the field, so fertiliser's gone up by over 100% as far as I remember. Tractors, etc., all takes diesel, which has gone up considerably. So farmers' costs have gone up, but they're not getting paid to cover those costs. What they're getting paid is from like the year before, and there was this bit in the middle when the costs would have been really high, and if supermarkets had priced it, they would have been saying, well, you know, yeah, it's gone up this much, and it, you know, we're charging more for. But now that costs are going down and food inflation is going down, the supermarkets are going to be like, well, you know, really, you don't need any more. But they're paying hand over fist. And seemingly, the UK government at one point said, oh yes, the UK's, you know, we're resilient. Their food source is resilient. According to a professor emeritus who does something somewhere, can you tell I only just read this and I didn't actually take it in properly? Seemingly the UK's food is not as resilient as we thought it was. So that's something to keep an eye on, because apart from like your cheese making farmer and stuff, your people who are having to get humans to harvest it are struggling. I think the government's done a 45,000 people can come in to help with farming, and the Farmers Union president is saying they actually need 77,000, not 45. So that's just a wee tick box exercise. So yeah, such a thing. So yes, I was thinking about that, and I was like, need to go and, you know, have a look at these things. All just, it's something that you look at and go, really? Okay. Maybe keep an eye on that. So, yeah. But in other news, my no spend is going well. I have my trusty loaf out of the freezer for my breakfast toast. I had stir fry last night for tea, and I was going to take it for lunch today, but there was enough left that it was like, if that was lunch, that was too big a portion for lunch. So I've just had stir fry again for dinner. I had taken a pie out of the freezer for lunch, but Mandy bought us breakfast rolls, which is your Lorne sausage, your flat square sausage we have up here. So I had one of them for like brunch. We had it about 11, well, back at 10. So I didn't need lunch. So my pie is back in the fridge. I will take that tomorrow because it was frozen today, so it will just be chilled tomorrow. So we've done that. So we're getting through little bits, but yeah, I don't eat very much by myself when I've got a full freezer, so I will keep going. But the good thing is that the no spend is looking good, because there's nothing really that I need to spend money on. So this is a good thing. So I can save for times when I need to make my big shopping list and go restock on stuff. So yeah, hopefully that will be me sorted. So I will go now and make more tea, and I will catch you later. I'm back. Wouldn't you know, I went through to my computer and went and looked up what else it was I was going to talk about, and it wasn't shopping at all. It was housing. Here in the UK, the government have just reduced the requirements for new house builders to be careful about the water runoffs and the pollution in the waterways. And I'm like, okay. So again, back to we're not supposed to be driving cars, we're going electric to stop the pollution. They're seemingly Thames Water and all that have been getting fined because of the pollution. But the government's now like, oh my goodness, we need houses, because house builders are not building houses because it's just not worth it. And look at how many restrictions you've put on us with this water thing. So now they've taken it off. It's not going through as part of legislation. And I'm like, do you know something? Do you know what you could have done that would have made much more sense? You could maybe have looked at London, where the number of emergency housings, like properties available, have dropped by huge numbers over the last few months as private landlords, where the council was renting the flat off them, their mortgage costs have gone up. So they've said to the council, get your tenant out, I'm not renting to you anymore, so that they can private rent it, because there's such a huge demand for private renting. So the council's got less and less property now. And I mean, please feel free to say that I might be simplistic in this thought, because I know it is very simplistic. But there are tower blocks that have been built and bought as investment properties. They've been built off plan. Nobody lives in them. Or you have a concierge at the desk and there's like one flat is occupied, unless it's like maybe 1 week out of the year. It was bought as an investment property for its value to go up. Why has London allowed that? Why has London Council sold off their council housing estates, sold them to private developers, and told them that they have to put maybe a 10% of affordable, which means normally a 20% reduction in price, which in the centre of London, there's none of us can afford that. Or even if they make some of it social, they've normally got the poor door round the back. Why did the government do that? Why have they been allowed to sell these things and nobody's living in them? And then there's all this stuff about the second housing, the holiday lets, etc., etc., so that people cannot afford to live in their own area. And I mean, someone said there was a survey done or something in about the Isle of Wight, which seemingly did not turn out very complimentary. But the newspaper I read that had reported on this YouTube video about the Isle of Wight said what's happened is there's so many people going there to retire, house prices are going up. There's no staff left anymore. Nobody can afford to live there. So places are closing and it's turning into a slum. So, do you know, I think there needs to be a different way of thinking about this. Before you start reducing the rules for health and safety for people in new homes or for the countryside round about, maybe look at what's available, what's empty, what's sitting just doing nothing so that somebody can make a profit off of it. And if there's that big a housing need, then start doing something about it. So there you go. That was my other wee bit that I'd forgotten. So now I'm going to go and put the kettle on. Catch you later.